The NBA All-Star Game was a disaster. This hasn't ever happened before. Wow, I am astonished by the level of shock I am experiencing right now. Who could have guessed this would happen? Well, actually, I could have guessed, so I didn't even tune in to any of the events of All-Star Weekend live because I knew it wouldn't be worth my time, and then it happened, and I watched it back, and even with it being limited, this crap was not worth my time, and it certainly wasn't worth yours. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you want to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. Also check out my new third channel. There's going to be a video with some more in-depth thoughts on the dunk contest over there. But with that said, as I did just say in the intro, I did not watch this live, so I did not get a full grasp of the level of frustration that would have come from this viewing experience. However, I have seen all of the clips from the actual basketball. Not that that's particularly relevant to this video because the NBA made sure that the actual basketball wasn't particularly relevant, but also I saw all the clips, all the different bad moments, which maybe is a little bit biased in how it's limiting to just those bad moments, but it's all anybody could talk about, so I feel that it is fair to talk about it myself. I didn't watch this live because it was my weekend, and I was like, I don't want to waste my weekend on trash, because I knew the broadcast was going to be trash, because I have a very, very, very low expectation for TNT broadcast as it is. I am very, very glad that this is the last one that they're going to be doing for All-Star Weekend, and pretty much they won't be the forward-facing group forever from now on, which is for the better. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the broadcast in a second. I do actually want to talk about the actual basketball first. The games were each about 10-ish minutes because 40 points is a really low target score in an all-star game. Even if you manage to get the players to put in a higher amount of effort in those condensed minutes, which I do think was accomplished for the most part, you're still just going to get so little basketball that it does not even feel worth it. And doesn't feel worth it on the broadcast end of things. I can't even imagine how infuriating this event must have been to actually participate or be at, actually witness this, because you're not even getting the brunt of the broadcast yourself. Instead, you're just sitting around in an empty arena, or not an empty arena, a full arena, but empty in terms of what you can view and experience yourself, waiting around for this actual basketball to happen. And when it actually does, it's extremely limited. I felt like the actual basketball on the floor was pretty good. I do also think my bar has just been lowered to such a degree for the amount of effort that I expect that I was just like, yeah, I mean, it looks like slightly more effort than a team shoot around, so it seems like things are improving. It's not really. It's still at a very sad point. And there is a lot to be said about how the NBA players do not take the All-Star Weekend as seriously as maybe they did in the past. I do think there is a lot of nostalgia goggles going on there that causes that. I don't think there was ever a point where All-Star Weekend was like this actually competitive basketball game. In fact, I would say that the 2020 All-Star Game is the only time that we ever got a game that was competitive, like throughout a very long stretch of time. And it's, to me, the best All-Star Weekend that ever happened. But of course, you can't kill an NBA legend every single year so that you get that same effect repeated. So the NBA has not been able to replicate anything like that energy ever since. And I think just because we got a brief taste of it, people got the idea that that's what it's supposed to be. It's never been that, not to that degree, and I'm frankly at a point where I doubt it ever will be. Even if you do some gimmicky tournament like this that is supposed to boost the level of energy and interest and engagement from these players, which again, I think it did a little bit, it is not making up for the deficit. The deficit in effort is far too dramatic for this to be an acceptable replacement. It's not. They tried it. I think if they took this tournament format and extended it, had it be more games, or at least had a higher target score in the game so that you got longer games, it could be better. It could be improved. But to me, it has felt like and it felt like going into this that this tournament style was putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. It's not going to cover all the ground that you need to. Moving on to the events pre-All-Star game, the dunk contest was cool. I was very disappointed in the performance of Buzelis. Hate to see a bunch of missed dunks. It also, I should have waited till after All-Star weekend to make my video about him because clearly I cursed him. But really good performance from Stephon Castle, really good performance from Mac McClung. There was a lot of debate about how much we should, or how we should view Mac being three-peating as dunk contest winner, but also him being there being kind of indicative of the lack of star power that the dunk contest has. I am of the opinion that the dunk contest isn't about dunks. Not in its entirety. It's not just about how quality the dunks are. I've seen people for years suggest that we do professional dunkers in these games, and I just can't get behind it. I don't see that as anything that anyone would be interested in because it's not about how good the dunks are. I would argue objectively Mac's dunk contest performance in this one is one of the best that's ever happened, but I still don't really give a shit because I don't care about Mac McClung. Like I said, more thoughts on that over on the third channel, so watch the video about that. But moving on from the dunk contest, the three-point contest was a three-point contest. I don't really know what else there is to say about it. I also found the candidates or the different participants to be a weird selection, especially Cade Cunningham making it, especially him making it when Malik Beasley is currently like third in three-point makes or something like that. He's definitely top three. I don't really get why they put a guy who's not a shooter in the three-point contest. Like, if there's anything that if there's any contest that doesn't need to be star-driven, it would be the three-point contest. But of course, it's not. I don't know why Steph doesn't participate. If I was Steph, I would do the three-point contest every single year because it's just, that's your thing. That's the thing you do, man. So go do that. If you're not going to shoot threes, then why? Anyways. Three-point contest was fine. I feel like the three-point contest has the highest lowest ceiling, highest floor of all the events. The three-point contest is always cool, always fine, but it's not that particularly engaging, especially when the resentment towards three-pointers has engaged so much. I think there was a novelty to the three-point contest earlier on because the three-point shot was a novelty in itself, and that just does not really exist anymore. The skills challenge, Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell won that. You want to know what's really sad? I had to look that up. I watched it. I watched it less than a day ago, and I already forgot who won the skills challenge, and I don't have any idea who won them the last couple of years. I think there was a year Sabonis won it. Maybe there was a year that Bam won it. I think they've done teams before, and it wasn't just this, but who gives a shit? Who has ever given even a little bit of a shit about the skills challenge? I know that I personally haven't. And I will comment on the Wemby and CP3 bullshit that they did where they just threw the ball vaguely at the rim instead of doing actual jump shots. I feel like you could have done that in a way where it wasn't obviously cheating and you just shoot really fast, but they didn't opt for that. Instead, they opted to get disqualified. That was silly. I saw a lot of people moralizing about it. I just don't give a shit about the skills challenge, so I can't be like, the integrity of the game is at stake. Who cares? Who cares? It's the skills challenge. So that's my thoughts on the actual basketball here. It was very whatever and very okay. And it certainly was not worth all the other bullshit that had to be dealt with that had nothing to do with any actual basketball here. This was not about celebrating the game. This was not about putting the spotlight on some of the league's best players. Really, all the league's best players were in San Francisco when they could have been at home with their families enjoying their break so that they could sit there and watch a very bad Kevin Hart performance. Like, what a disaster this was in terms of presentation. Actually, impressively baffling how bad it was. The number one thing that stands out to me is that there was a 9-minute tribute to the TNT crew covering the All-Star game. I didn't say a tribute to the TNT crew for all of their time doing this show. While I am a very big hater of the TNT crew, and I always will be, I understand a level of nostalgia, and I understand the fact they've been doing it for years. So when they have their last broadcast that's shoved in front of everybody so that they can ruin the reputation of the game, I understand if they want to do some long-ass tribute thing, but you get a 9-minute tribute for your coverage of just All-Star Weekend. Once again, I ask, who gives a shit? Who really cared to see that? But it's not just that they did that tribute. They did it in the middle of a game. The game, I believe the score was like 11-1-ish, and they paused it. They were like, all right, all of you players go sit. We're watching the TNT Crew clip compilation. What are you talking about? The basketball isn't at the forefront of things at all when you're doing that, especially. It's just this damn clown show. Look at all these guys being super funny over the years. Ha ha, isn't it really great? But it's not. It really isn't. And if I was at home and I tuned in to watch All-Star basketball and this shit was going on in the middle of the game and not like halftime. These are tournament games to 40. The other ones played throughout the entire thing without stoppage, but they stopped it this way so that they could bullshit. Kevin Hart is annoying and rarely funny to me. I do think he had his moments earlier on in his career, but then he became one of the most branded human beings in the history of branded human beings. I mean, the guy is a walking billboard for multiple different companies, which is something that him and Shaq have in common. Did you guys know that Kevin Hart is short and Shaq is tall? It's the funniest shit ever. I just noticed this when they were standing next to each other. It was like, whoa. It's like one of these guys is 5'5" and the other is 7'2". It's crazy. Did you notice that? I noticed that. They seemed to notice that. They were happy to talk about it a lot. Draymond Green goes on the broadcast and shits on the whole event. Why are you already a bitter old man? You're still in the fucking league. You just got a little bit of gray on your beard, so you decided to just start being a hater like that. Like, I have felt like Draymond Green has historically done a pretty good job on broadcasts of championing the game, showing a level of respect. Obviously, there are moments where there's personal vendettas that get in the way of his actual perspective, and there's not much you can do about that. But he goes up there and he's like, the Rising Stars shouldn't be playing in this game. Which, frankly, I strongly disagree. I thought the Rising Stars idea was one of the few good ones because it would suck to get embarrassed by the Rising Stars as a team that's representing the best players in the league to get cooked by just the best young players. It would be embarrassing, and that was a decent motivator, especially in that game. I felt like that was the one where we saw the most amount of effort across the board because the Rising Stars had something to prove and the All-Stars had to be sure that they didn't. So I don't know why he was hating on that. Seemed like he was just hating on young players for the sake of it. And he's just mostly being negative the whole time. You can say the same thing about the TNT Crew. There wasn't that much they did that was that blatantly egregious other than Shaq talking about fucking bowl in the middle of the game because Shaq does not care to talk about any of the multiple all-star players there, but he needs to bring up bowl to make his stupid ass point that should display an egregious malpractice level of lack of basketball knowledge to think that bowl could do what Wemby did with more opportunity. But he went on that bullshit rant for like a couple of minutes again. Kept, I think, alluding to it a few other times throughout the broadcast. One way or the other, just a bunch of bullshit that no one cares about. That's a waste of time. And I guarantee you, if I did tune into this live, I would have been on my phone the whole time. I would have been listening to a true crime podcast because I'm one of those basic bitches. Oh, wait, I didn't need to highlight one more thing. Ads everywhere, constantly, all the time. Obviously, I didn't experience that aspect of it, but you can literally just look at the math because someone did it. Out of the total 3-hour broadcast, 180 minutes, 140 of it was either dumb bullshit from the broadcast, a live performance, Kevin Hart failing to be funny, and then that or commercials or ads inside the broadcast. So you are tuning in to 2.5 hours of ads and a half hour of basketball. What a fun time that is. In total, 33 minutes of actual basketball action, 40-ish minutes with the stoppages. That's unacceptably low. That's an unacceptable lack of basketball for an all-star basketball game. How can NBA players be expected to take this seriously when the NBA very clearly doesn't? At least not in terms of the quote-unquote, like, the sanctity of the game, the spirit of the game, respecting the game. That's what all the fucking boomer NBA players who also weren't trying all that hard during the All-Star game like to say. But the fucking reality is the NBA itself hasn't respected the game in terms of their priorities and presentation. Mr. Beast is at this show so that we can get the youngins to watch this clip of him interacting with Kevin Hart, and we get to put, there's a House of Highlights video that says $100,000 Mr. Beast challenge. Well, that's great. I'm glad that we're doing YouTube clickbait instead of talking about basketball. I'm glad that that's what we're doing. There's this talk of a one-on-one tournament for $1 million. How many times is the solution going to be a tournament? How do you keep hitting that button? I'm not acting like it's been a universally bad thing, because it hasn't. Playing tournaments cool. In-season tournament seems good, even though I'm still iffy on it in some aspects of it. But we don't need everything to be a tournament. I think you can do classic East versus West in a way that if you just simply focus on the basketball, you can get the players to try. I like the idea of a 1v1 tournament, but honestly, I don't think NBA players would stake their reputation on $1 million. NBA players make too much goddamn money now. And that's another aspect of things. Like, I felt there was more heart and soul on the court in the older version of basketball because more people were not $100 million men. They came from poverty. They didn't make it to the NBA because their parents paid for them to go to AAU tournaments. Like, you actually had some level of respect for the dollar. Like, I don't think if you make millions and millions and millions a year, 60, 50, 80 in the endorsement category on top of everything else, how are you going to give a shit about a $1 million prize? How? Why would you? You wouldn't. The tournament, in-season tournament, that could actually affect things because the lower tier players were making an amount of money that isn't necessarily life-changing, especially if their NBA career is short-lived. But you don't have this, you're not going to get this environment, especially when everything is so much about the money inherently. Like, obviously the All-Star Weekend, I'm not sitting here and pretending like All-Star Weekend hasn't been about making money before. Obviously it has. The NBA, basketball, it is a business. It always has been. They used to pay some mind to the idea of subtlety, of not beating people over the head with advertisements. And over the years, they've just cranked the dial up more and more, seeing more and more what they can get away with and what people will passively accept. And as time is going on, across the board in all industries of entertainment, there's more ads than ever. Obviously, I do ads. Ads are a part of business, especially in the entertainment industry. I get it. However, there is a level where it just becomes greedy and it becomes counterproductive. Because while you might be making more money from having ads on ads on ads, you could make more money by attracting more viewership, charging more for those ads, and not beating people over the head with them. But the NBA has this too big to fail situation in late stage capitalism, which we're seeing across the board in multiple different industries, where they can insult the viewer's time, or these different industries can insult their customer base because they are too big to fail. Viewership conversations are cool, but the NBA is not particularly worried about it because they can just have Mr. Beast show up. They can just do whatever other bullshit, jingle keys in front of the camera so that enough people show up, and those people that do are going to be fed ad after ad after ad, which is making the NBA more money than they did in the Michael Jordan era where their viewership was double. Viewership is not the end-all be-all of making money for the NBA, and their pockets are lined now more than ever. Everybody across the board is making more money now than ever, and it is only about the money now. It only can be. And if I'm going to tune in to a 3-hour broadcast and it's mostly advertisement, then I don't want to fucking watch it. Okay, I watched the highlights and stuff so I could make this YouTube video. But make no mistake, if I was a plumber, I wouldn't have tuned into this shit. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't have watched the last couple of them. I am doing this purely as obligation. And even on the front of it being obligation, I debated whether or not I'd even make a video about All-Star Weekend in the first place. Because it's not the least bit surprising that this thing was bad. It has been bad. I went in with no expectations, and somehow zero expectations, I still got disappointed. It's a joke. It's a clown show. You cannot ask these players to show up to a clown show and then act like it's Game 7 of the finals. They're going to act like clowns themselves to get in on the clown show action. It's so egregious. It's a waste of everyone's time. I would rather there just be a week of no basketball. All the players get to rest and go home and chill out with their families or, multiple different Instagram models, whatever they're into. Let them do that instead of have them show up to clearly not want to do this thing and have to sit through a bunch of bullshit from people who clearly don't want this game to be what they claim they want it to be. They want this game to be just entertaining enough that you will show up and look at all the gambling ads and look at all the ads for all the other bullshit. And it's depressing. It is depressing how much late-stage capitalism is interfering with everything, including sports, including video games, including movies, whatever industry you want to talk about. You can't even escape it. You can't. So that's the end of the video. You can't escape it. Hopeful message. Go check out the third channel. We're also doing Discord hot takes over there. Go ahead and join our Discord by joining our Patreon for $3 a month. That's it, though. Peace.